Hello, Squirrel Tribe. I hope everybody's having a really good day. So listen, I want to talk about something that affects middle class America. I don't feel like it affects the 1%. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but I feel like it affects the majority of Americans, which is the middle class, right? I feel like the middle class is the majority at this point, although we're slowly becoming the lower class, which is the new majority, given everything that's going on with our economy, all the places that are closing. You got to think you have Hooters restaurants closing, you've got Red Lobsters closing, you have a bunch of different restaurants closing. And one of the first things I thought about when I saw the headlines, and we've talked about them before, with all these restaurants closing, was because tip culture is kind of hard. I think that's the right way to put this right now. It's kind of difficult and hard for people to go out to eat in a tip culture kind of thing, to go get their hair done, to go get their nails done, to go any place that requires, we're gonna air quote requires here, because technically it is not a requirement to tip at restaurants or nail salons or hair salons or any place like that. It is something that you do for good service, right? But a lot of people feel required to tip, so they have stopped going to a lot of places, especially restaurants, especially because the cost of food has gone through the roof at restaurants. You have some restaurants who their menu prices have gone up over 100% in the last couple of years, thanks to good old shortages and whatnots during the pandemic, whatever. And now you have more and more places that are closing down. You have small places that are closing, just hair salons, nail salons, any kind of service-based thing, hospitality, anything that is that is tip-based. There we go. Hello. You have a lot of these places closing or having less employees because there's less people going out. Now, Donald J. Trump, Mr. Future President, 2024, he wants to do no tip tax, no tax on tips. He's even got stickers coming out that are, no tax on tips. He wants people to write that on their receipts when they go to places where they do leave a tip. He wants them to say no tax on tips for Donald Trump or by Donald Trump, something along those lines, to let people know that they are on the side of the server or whoever else is in this hospitality work situation that requires tips or lives off of tips. Now, as someone who has worked numerous jobs throughout my entire life that were tip-based, I can understand how important tipping is. I will never go someplace where I can't tip. If I don't have the ability to tip, I'm not going to go, because I understand that people rely heavily on the tips. And here's the problem. They rely heavily on the tips because the corporations that own these restaurants, these hair salons, anything else that is a tip location, they're not paying their employees correctly. I know this is like a 50-50 kind of thing. Half the people hate tipping, other half understand it. And I think the half that understand it are, generally speaking, ones that have worked in some place where you lived off of tips. The other half are people who may not have ever, but also believe that employers should be paying the wage for the employee, not the customers paying their wage via tips. And I can understand both sides. As somebody, again, who has worked in the service industry like numerous years throughout my life, I can see both sides, and I agree 100% completely with both sides. I will say that Donald Trump I think he was in Detroit, he was somewhere here in Florida, and he was going basically and talking to middle class Americans, the neighborhoods where people don't have the corporate jobs and aren't pulling in, 6 figures a year. He's going to the places where they do rely on this tip culture in order to make a living, to pay their rent, to buy their groceries, to make a car payment, to get health insurance, any of these kind of things, right? And I think it's amazing that he is going and doing that. I don't know that Biden is doing anything like that. I don't think he really cares, in all honesty, about middle class America, because he's currently the one who is destroying middle class America with all the things he has put into place the last couple of years. But the whole tip culture is a very difficult thing, because here's you got to look at it from, I'm breaking things here in the Jeep. You have to look at it from like every standpoint, okay? When Donald Trump wins in 2024, in November, and he does implement this no tax on tips thing, you're going to see less money, less revenue going into the Social Security, into things like that. If you're not taxing on tips, right? There's less money going into the pot of the United States to then turn around and fix whatever needs fixing, which I don't Donald Trump will probably fix things. Biden's using the money for who knows what charging stations that haven't even been put up for electric vehicles, that as soon as somebody else gets into office is going to make it so it's no longer a mandate that you have to have an electric vehicle. But anyway, that's not the point either. So the downside here is that if you do stop taxing tips, right, you're going to have less tax money going into Social Security and all this other stuff. You're also, I'm trying to think of all the talking points that I had come up with because I didn't bring notes today. I'm just like, whatever. And y'all know how my brain works if you've been here on SquirrelTribe before. So you're going to have less money going into just the tax fund in general. But you're also going to have more people who are willing to go back into customer service, tip related, hospitality kind of jobs. That's a plus, right? That's a plus, right? Except then it's going to be extremely competitive and places will be able to pay even less to get you in the door because they know you're not going to have to pay taxes on your tips. So it's going to be this kind of like like a teeter-totter kind of thing of it being beneficial and it hurting in the long run. I think what Donald Trump wants to do is absolutely amazing. Personally, I think it's absolutely amazing. But I'm hoping that when he gets reelected and he decides to put this through as a bill, a law, however he's going to do this, that it doesn't, again, like screw the middle class unintentionally because of what then corporations and employers are going to do to make it so that they still make their money and they still, because they still have to pay taxes on the employees. And then if the employees aren't paying taxes or whatever else, it's going to, I don't know if it's going to make it so it's more expensive for companies to have employees. So they're going to have less employees. If they're going to make it so that they can pay them less because they're keeping more of their tip money, I'm not quite sure what will happen. I will say that when my husband and daughter and I traveled along the West Coast 2 summers ago, we went to Seattle. And I remember specifically, we were in a hotel. We stayed at like Holiday Inn or someplace, and they had like a small little restaurant in there. And we went to go get something to eat because we were hungry. And when the bill came out, the guy, there was no space for a tip. And I was like, hey, how do we tip you? And he goes, no, we get paid hourly here. There's no tipping here. You got paid like $19 an hour or something in Seattle two years ago, right? 2 summers ago. He's like, we get paid $19 an hour. There's no tipping. If you want to tip, you can always leave a cash tip or whatever else. And then he would get that completely. Other places still had a spot for extra tip, but if you were to tip them, the company got 25% of that tip and then the employee got the rest of the tip, which never ever has made sense to me when a tip is left for somebody and half of it or some of it goes towards an employer and not all directly to the employee. I try to tip in cash as much as possible when I have the ability, because you're not paying taxes on a cash that you're not telling the IRS about, right? So if you guys have the ability, when you go out to places and you do want to tip, do it in cash as often as possible. If not, your credit card, there's, the apps, a lot of people use Cash App and Venmo. I took my dog to get a groom at PetSmart. So I have a golden doodle and it's summertime and poor little thing gets hot as crap out because it's, I'm in Florida and it's hot as balls here. So I got him like basically shaved down. And I had to go to the front to pay the bill in order to take him home. When I get to the front to pay the bill, I asked the person up front, I said, hey, where's the little part to leave some sort of tip for the girl who did his groom, because she did a really good job and it's a lot of work and whatever else. And I know some people will say, why are you tipping? Because she gets paid hourly and all this other stuff. I don't know what her hourly pay is. And again, I was raised in tip culture. I've worked in tip culture. So for good customer service and a job well done, I will still tip. Same thing when people, do your yard or things like that. People still tip them. You get a Spark delivery, or you get, sometimes people tip their Amazon drivers and UPS and FedEx, like over the holidays and things like that, just randomly, right? But I get to the front of PetSmart and I run my card and I'm like, hey, where's the thing for tip? And he goes, oh no, we don't tip here. And I immediately felt bad for all the people who work back in the grooming section, because that's hours of work that they're doing. Again, I don't know how much they get paid hourly, but it is a customer service kind of job, right? So I went back there to pick up Max, the golden doodle, and I noticed that they had a wall with all of the workers, employees' names, and then either their Venmo or their Cash App, so that customers could tip them accordingly if they wanted to. And they had little baby envelopes, like itty bitty envelopes, where you could leave a cash tip if you wanted to. And I thought that was nice, that they were, that maybe not nice, but I thought it was smart on their part, that they were being proactive about getting a tip. They've never asked for one, right? But they were being proactive about getting a tip if somebody wanted to leave a tip, since the company they worked for wasn't doing it. But it goes back to kind of my point. If the company is paying enough to not need a tip, how long will it take for us, and myself included, to get out of this tip culture mindset, right? If Trump does win, when he wins in November, and does put through this no tax on tips, how will it affect, in all honesty, how will it affect the working class and the jobs that are available and the corporations, and then, you know, the money that's going into the countrywide tax pool? I don't know what to call this. Y'all have been here before, and my brain is not braining, and I hate it when it happens. I shouldn't have waited so long to record, because now I'm also hungry. And my brain works even less when I'm hungry, but at least I'm not hangry, so there is a plus. But I have to wonder how that's going to work with places going out of business and closing down, like I said, Hooters and Red Lobster and stuff like that. A lot of that is because the service itself, the service industry itself, doesn't have good customer service anymore. So I can understand why people don't want to tip on bad customer service, but then you also don't really want, at the same time, again, this is a double-edged sword kind of thing, you also don't want to go to a restaurant where somebody's getting paid $20 an hour. They know they're not going to get tips, because then how is your customer service going to be? Are they really going to take care of you? There's a place here where I live that we went to this restaurant months and months ago, and on their menu, it now says that an automatic 20% gratuity will be added to every check. And the girl told us about it at the beginning. She goes, I just want to let you know and point out we have a new policy implemented. 20% is already added in, you know, so you don't have to tip at the end. It's already, gratuity is automatically added no matter how big your party is or whatever else. And we're like, okay, that's cool, because I guess some people want to leave because some people don't tip. But that's another reason why they added it, because a lot of cultures do not tip. So when they go on vacation to places, especially here in the United States, they're like, what the crap is this? Why am I paying you extra? I just paid for my meal. Why am I paying your salary? You know, whatever. So she tells us about it, and we never saw her again. We gave her our order, ran out of drinks, needed condiments, couldn't get them, because she didn't have to do the work anymore. She was automatically going to get that tip. Whereas if that tip had not been automatically added in, she would have done her job. We would have had refills, the condiments we needed, everything else, and it would have been a much better experience. Because of the experience we had, we have not been back. And when people email me, they're like, hey, I'm coming to your area to visit, what are the places we should go? I specifically say, do not go here, based off of that one time. And that might not be nice or might not be fair. Maybe all the other servers aren't like that. But unfortunately, first impressions are what matter and what stick with you. And that was my first impression of that place, was that horrible service, because they already knew they were going to get their tip. Didn't really matter anymore, right? So the whole thing with Trump wanting to not tax tips, double-edged sword. I'm all for it, and I'm for it and I'm against it. I'm not all for either way, but I think it's a good idea, but I also worry about the negative side effects to it. If you work in a service industry where you get tipped, I'm very curious to know your thoughts, because I feel like it's going to be such a back and forth kind of thing with people. People in the service industry probably are really excited about it, right? But I think they also understand that that will then definitely screw them from getting some sort of pay raise. If now they're not having to get taxed on their tips, there's no incentive for employers to give them a pay raise, like an hourly thing, because they can say, well, at least you're not paying taxes. If you got pay raise hourly, you'd have to pay taxes on that. So in the long run, you're better off this way. And you're going to see more and more companies start your payoff lower in hopes that your customers will basically help you make ends meet with their tip money. It's a really weird place to be in. Like, it sounds great. It sounds amazing. And I love that Donald Trump's trying to do it. It sounds amazing. But when you step back and look at it, it kind of gives you pause and go, what are the ramifications though? And that's what I think of, and that's what I worry about. Again, I look at things a little bit differently. And I don't like to be negative Nancy or whatever, or petty Patty's different. I've been petty Patty once in a while. It's fine. It happens. But I don't like to be negative about stuff, but I also can't always just be super optimistic and positive about things, because you need to know the possibility of the downsides or the negative effects, right? So that's why we've had this conversation today, and I can feel an eye boogie like making its way there. So that's it, Squirrel Tribe. I want to know your thoughts. Again, if you're in a customer service industry that relies on tips, how do you feel about it? Are you like, yay, or are you like, ugh? Like, you know what I mean? So that's that. I love y'all immensely. I'll be back tomorrow with more stuff. Okay, bye.